Hi guys, I'm Chris the High Peak Chaplain, and this is Holy at Home. Now, Holy at Home is all about creating that space for worship, that space of prayer in our own homes. When we can't access our own churches, we can't access our own sacred spaces that we would usually use, how do we turn the spaces we have in our own homes, our kitchens, our living rooms, our gardens, how do we turn those into spaces of prayer? And what better space than a garden? Some of the greatest saints and some of the greatest people in the whole Christian tradition have used gardens for prayer. For example, St. Francis of Assisi loved to pray in the olive gardens in Assisi. He used to love to be with nature and spend time there. And of course, we can think back to that Maundy Thursday night when Jesus, in his hour of need, in his hour of most hurting and most painful, he went to the Garden of Gethsemane and he prayed there amongst the trees, amongst the olive groves, and he prayed in the garden. So we're going to do some praying in the garden. We're going to prepare ourselves a garden, because the theme of this week, that's right, it's Pentecost. So on Sunday, we celebrated the Feast of Pentecost, which is a massive feast in our church's year. It's technically the birthday of the church. It's the day that we began to recognise ourselves no longer as Jews as we were before, but we were now Christians. We were now followers of Christ, followers of Jesus. And the disciples took this message across the world. It came to everyone. It wasn't just for people in Galilee. It wasn't just for people in Jerusalem. It wasn't just for people in Israel. It was for the whole world. And that started on this day, on the day of Pentecost. So what are we going to do to mark that? Well, I thought we'd make a Pentecost garden. Now I know what you're thinking. I'm lying to you. I ain't got a clue what you're thinking, but I'm going to carry on talking anyway. So, sometimes at Easter, lots of people who have a keen interest in gardening or just have nice gardens like to make what we call an Easter garden. So they take a plant pot, they put some soil in it, some nice grass, some nice plants, and then they put a few rocks around to create that tomb, the empty tomb, to symbolise Jesus rising from the dead. And this becomes an act of prayer for them. Not only to create the garden, but then wherever they put that within their garden, that creates for them a sacred space where they can remember that triumphant moment that Jesus rose from the grave. Now we're going to do the same thing, but rather than using Easter, we're going to use Pentecost. Now, this time, I do know what you're thinking. Oh, Chris, so are we going to put a bunch of plants in a plant pot and set it on fire? No, because safeguarding, health and safety, and I get sacked. Yeah, not happening. No. We're not going to set things on fire. Instead, we're going to focus on one of the other key parts of the Pentecost story. That when the disciples went out and spoke to people, they didn't just speak to them in what they would have spoken at that time, which was Aramaic. But everyone in that crowd heard them in their own native language. They heard them in Greek. They heard them in Aramaic. They heard them in Spanish and Italian and Latin. They would hear them in English, and they would hear them in Russian and Polish. They would hear them in every language known, even Yorkshire, even Scouse, all of it. They would have heard it in their own language. And that's what we're going to focus on, the fact that that language is a language of love. And Jesus, when he speaks to us where we are at. A friend of mine is Welsh. And she says that when she prays to God in Welsh because her God speaks Welsh. And that actually makes sense, because God meets us where we're at. He meets us where we are. So we're going to now create ourselves a Pentecost garden that speaks of that love and that joy and that peace, spreading to all nations, to all languages, to all tongues, to all nations. So, here is your way. In fact, here is our way. Here is how to make your own Pentecost garden. There's a couple of things you're going to need. First thing you'll need is a plant pot, complete with soil, full of small rocks, just enough to fit inside your plant pot, and make sure they've got flat edges, so you can use slate, pebbles, or just little rocks you find around your garden or on your daily walks. You'll need some chalk, either multicoloured or single colour, it's whichever you guys prefer or can get your hands on. Next up, to go to mum or go to big sister and ask if you can borrow some hairspray. And finally, most important, you'll need a phone because we're going to need that Google Translate real bad. So the first thing we need to do is we need to get our phone, we need to get our rocks, and we need to get our chalk. We need to gather them together because what we're going to do is we're going to write on each of these rocks, on each of these slabs that we picked, we're going to write a word, but each one will be in a different language. Now we want this word to be the centerpiece to our garden, the centerpiece to what we want to think about every time we think of the story of Pentecost. So what do we want to think about? Now earlier I spoke about those 3 words, love, joy and peace. Now those are the things that just come to my head because those are the things that come out of the gospel. It's what the gospel is all about. It's about the love of God, the joy in his spirit and the peace that he brings to all of us. So what word could you pick? Maybe you want to focus on something like the word faith. Maybe you want to take one of the gifts or the fruits of the Holy Spirit and go and look in the books of St. Paul and find one of those out and pick one of those. But pick something that you think is special to Pentecost. What do you think of when you think of Pentecost? You might want to put the word spirit. You might want to put the word God. You might want to put the word fire. But something for you to focus on. What do you want to focus on during the Pentecost story and from your Pentecost garden? So today, I'm going to focus on the word love. So, once you pick your word, you then want to use your phone to open up Google Translate and find as many different versions of that word as possible. So I did my research. I went and found all the different ways that you can say love in the languages that I chose. Now, I've only got 4 rocks because that's all I can fit in my plant pot. You might be able to fit loads and want to go really, really overboard with this and put as many languages in there as possible. What I've decided to do, because I've got less rocks, I'm going to pick languages that are particularly special to me or something that I feel really called to write down about. So I've chosen to do it in English. I'm going to do it in Gaelic because I'm part Irish, so that connects me to my family. I'm going to do it in Hebrew because that was the original language of the Bible and of the scriptures, so what Jesus would have read. And I'm going to write the last one in Latin because that was love in English, in Gaelic, in Hebrew, and in Latin. Now you might not be able to tell what's on these rocks, and that's fine. It took me a while, but it's okay. It's okay. It only took me all my effort. But honestly, it's fine because no matter what's on these, as long as you know which one is which, that's all that matters. As long as you understand them, it doesn't matter what they really look like if you struggle to write some of the writing, because some of the languages have really hard writing. Now, what we need to do at this point is to make sure that these are safe from the weather and safe, especially from the rain, because chalk will wash off with any water. So this is where Mum's hairspray comes in. So we just take the hairspray and we lightly spray across. And we just spray across them. We don't want to spray too much because it might knock off some of the chalk. So you might have seen there, love came off a bit. So that's why we don't put on too much, but also make sure that you get a parent or a grown-up to help out with this bit, because sometimes it can be a little bit finicky, and it's always best to let them work with the sprays. So take your plant pot, mine's called Henry, and you want to add your rocks to the plant pot in whatever way you want. And as you can see, mine's just got a little bit of dirt in it, a little bit of mud and rock, but you can use all sorts. You could put a bit of grass in there, you can maybe put in a few plants or a few flowers, make it look really pretty, or you might just want to go really simple like this one here. So, the garden is ready. It's not looking too pretty, so I might add a few flowers to it. But once you've got it in place, the plant pot is ready, find a space in your garden and turn that into your sacred space, into your quiet space where you can really think and pray and think about the gifts that we are given during the Feast at Pentecost. And don't forget to share some of the pictures of your Pentecost gardens with us as well, and we'll see if we can share them on our social media, on our website. But I'm Chris, the High Peak Chaplain. God bless.